Storage units and the things that we collect inside of them. This time on the Everything is a Primary Source podcast. As a fellow educator, I know that taking our social studies classes to historical sites and museums can be a rewarding experience for everyone involved. But between coordinating transportation, keeping track of permission slips, and paying out of pocket for unforeseen expenses, it can also be a large task for a busy teacher. The Everything is a Primary Source to Go artifact borrowing service replicates the most engaging part of a museum field trip, and that's interacting with real historic objects directly in your classroom, but without the process and cost of taking your class off campus. The Everything is a Primary Source archive contains ephemera and physical objects dating from the 1820s onward, with emphasis on the 20th century. Pre-made and curated kits pull from the collection and are designed to complement your curriculum, just as the exhibits at your favorite cultural center do. Visit everything-history.com to learn more about EPS to Go and how it can help you bring the museum to your classroom. Welcome to the Everything is a Primary Source podcast, the show where we construct history through popular culture. I'm your host, Eric Salmonson. I'm a social studies teacher, historian, and pop culture enthusiast. Each episode, I sit down with everyday people to discuss the media, objects, places, and events that shape us and reveal what they say about the past, as well as who we are now. The Everything is a Primary Source podcast is, therefore, your history, my history, our history through popular culture. So I had a feeling this was going to happen at the Ephemera Fair. I ran into somebody who does something very similar to what I do on Everything is a Primary Source. This is Tony, and you said co-host of another podcast.
That's right. Yeah. My name is Tony Wellman, and I'm a co-host of another podcast called Storage Unit 217.
Is there a significance to the 217? Is there some story
it's a
behind
mystery.
that?
Right now, it's a mystery. It's just the storage unit that was rented.
I can't think. I think like The Shining or something like Room. I know there's a room in The Shining that has for whatever. But
well, maybe you'll find out about it. But no, it was the idea came from my partner in the podcast, Lou Green. And who's a longtime collector. I'm a bit of a collector too, and he's had a series of storage units over the years because that's how he maintained peace domestically with his wife. And so we created a podcast, and the name he came up with.
I think that's actually worthy of discussion because I would say storage units, first of all, are a very modern thing.
Yes.
You mentioned collecting, and your friend's a collector as well, and I think we're surrounded right now.
I think we're safe here.
Lots of collectors,
friends.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a joke. I live in New England, and they say, Yankees can't park their cars in the garages because it's just full of stuff. We don't have anywhere to put our cars. Yeah. Just get covered in snow all winter long because it's just. And it's true. I mean, there's not a single garage in New England that's not being used to store everything else.
Well, everyone used to have attics and barns and chicken coops. So how many people have attics and barns and chicken coops now?
And even if they did have them, they're probably full of all the stuff that they don't want to throw away. What do you think comes from that idea of, I guess, where does it begin? That... Is it a psychological thing where we're like, I don't want to give away things because I'm just trying to figure out like the historic value of collecting?
Well, historically, of course, people valued physical things. They were rare. Furniture was handmade. It was rare. You didn't just throw it away. It's only in the past half century or so, we've become more of a throwaway culture. We used to be a culture that was use and reuse or repurpose, and maybe we're going back to that a little bit now.
And so much of what we collect has long since I mean, like...
Well, we're at an ephemera show.
Yeah,
now,
right.
So-
These maps and stuff, like, you shouldn't use those to navigate anymore because half the roads aren't...
Unless you're really into adventure.
Right. So, like, the usefulness, the actual utility of a lot of the things that we collect
Yeah.
has long since... I mean, we're looking at a historical value. So
Right.
On your show, walk us through a generic episode.
Sure. Well, it ties into this because I think what you're touching on is the personal connection. And what you do here with these interviews, I guess, is the personal connection people have to, in this case, ephemera or anything that they're collecting and why. And that's a huge subject psychologically, as to why people collect. Obviously it clicks with people, often with their youth, something connected with their youth, or just an interest that they have for good Lord knows why, and they just go from there. I mean, maybe we're just a nation of hoarders.
Right. Well, I think there's the fine line is a hoarder is not a hoarder if they call themselves a collector, right? Or an ephemerist or something like that.
And then there are delineations along those lines. I mean, some people can't stop collecting.
Yeah.
Other people are very controlled about it and so on. So where does the collector stop and the hoarder to begin? Or where does the accumulator versus the collector versus... Who knows? It's a very personal thing.
We have a lot of media in the last 20 years or so that's kind of relied on that. You have shows like Hoarders,
Yes.
which is kind of I know that they did try to aim to have some kind of meaning behind it. They'd have like psychologists talk to the people, and
Sure.
But it did seem almost
Well, those are extreme
exploitation.
situations, I think.
Yeah, and then you had other shows like
Because
American.
It's theater, it's entertainment, so they're extreme situations.
And I think they put them up to some of the behaviors and stuff. But there's other shows like American Pickers, which relies on people collecting and just kind of having stuff. There's a more refined version, Antiques Roadshow, which has been around forever.
Sure.
Where people bring in things that either they themselves have collected or has just been passed down. It's been in the attic, right? Treasures in the attic, things like that. And then, of course, it sounds like what you have is a much more refined version of, if you've ever seen Storage Wars, right? Those
Yes,
shows
yes.
where they open up a storage locker and they bid on it, and then I watched a season of it or so just one time, just because I'm like, I like finding stuff, treasures, but I kind of suspected that, I'm like, there's no way that antique guns are in every single one of these storage lockers, because it seemed like the same pattern repeated itself, what these guys got.
It's show business.
Right.
Remember, it's show business.
We wouldn't have the material for those shows. Not a single producer in the History Channel, Discovery Channel, or any of this would be able to even conceive of such a show if there wasn't that behavior in enough people around the country to be like, I'm not going to throw this out. I'm going to hold on to it.
Yeah.
And so I think between the obvious, your show differs quite a bit from Storage Wars, right?
Sure. I'll lay it out for you.
Yeah.
You asked what a typical episode is. So it's called Storage Unit 217. It takes place, you can hear it on Mixcloud.com. So you just go to Mixcloud.com and search Storage Unit 217. We're partnered with Kutztown University, the Center for Mallet Percussion Research, and therein lies a story. But the whole idea is that I visit the storage unit owned by my friend Lou Green, who is, in fact, a longtime collector, as am I, him a little longer than I. And we walk into the storage unit he's held for 50 years and just pull random things, or maybe not so random things, off the shelf, and stories come out of it, as you're doing, and often personal stories. And the storage unit in this case is mythical, but it's drawn from real collecting stories on his part or my part or people we know. So it's not fictional. It's just it's a jumping off point for that, and it's a lot of fun. And he comes from a very historically musical family. The Green brothers were very famous recording pioneers in the early record industry, and so he's collected records and phonographs and so on for many years, as have I. So a lot of these are musically related, so we can have selections of music and so on. It's a lot of fun and a lot of laughs, and we've done 66 episodes so far. So,
what are some of the ones that stand out to you? Do you have some favorites?
Well, there are a lot of them that do concern his uncles, Joe and George Hamilton Green, who were very famous xylophonists, recorded for Thomas Edison and the pioneer recording things. We've done shows. We just did a couple shows on magazines that he came up with called the Voice of the Victor, which was the house organ. We were an ephemera show, so if you see any here, it's a very rare magazine that the Victor Company, which later became RCA Victor, exactly, put out for their salespeople. So it's hard to come by these, and we just thumb through the pages, and you alight on anything. And there's a story about Jack Dempsey and his Victrola and how it brought him entertainment, or tips for salesmen, things like that, all kinds of stuff. So it has a lot of surprises, and we did 2 shows on that because he has a big stack of those.
Whether it be storage unit or junk shop or thrift store or any of these places, I feel like if anybody takes the time that you take, we're going to get those kinds of historical values from it, that we're going to get stories and it's going to mean something to us. I feel like the pace of life has gotten so fast that we're just pressured, even if we don't realize why we're pressured, to just look at something and move on, and not actually take the time to absorb it and make sense out of it. Do you think that if more people did, in other words, is there an innate part of being a person that we are historians, that we can figure things out well enough, that if we just took the time to, instead of just looking at the cover of an old magazine, be like, yep, that's fine,
Oh, we got deep. We got deep into the magazine.
I mean, just a single ad,
you
said, can produce. I mean, because if nothing else, out of respect for the person that took the time to make that ad, behind that ad is at least 2 jobs, if not more occupations, and all that time and consideration. The most simple graphic has this placemat that I have right here. It's actually kind of elaborate.
What do we look?
It's a map of Maine.
Oh, okay.
And
it was probably in a Maine restaurant.
Right.
A restaurant in Maine.
That's effort that somebody put there to make this and illustrate it and stuff.
I think it calls upon, what you're touching on is very basic. You need 2 things. You need an attention span. You need to be able to look and think about something more than just a few seconds or so. And number 2, you have to have curiosity.
Yeah.
Natural curiosity. Not the more people, the better. But not everybody seems to have curiosity. They're just going from one thing to the other. And I think they miss out on a lot.
I know we're surrounded by people who think the same way that we do.
Yes,
because as we're talking, I've seen all sorts of people that represent different age groups and backgrounds and things like that.
From little kids to the seniors here.
And we have that appreciation for sure.
But this is an ephemera show. Don't you think it's fascinating that so much of this, I'd say most of it, is dealing with a passionate interest in things which were assumed would have been thrown away.
Right.
And yet, if they can just survive long enough, people pay large amounts of money for a lot of them.
I remember getting kind of upset one time, not like indignant or weeping or anything like that, but I lived for a time on a farm in Maryland, and it's neither here nor there, but we were allowed to use, there's a dumpster on the property that we were allowed to bring our trash to, and we went there to throw away our trash one time, and there's just a whole bunch of records in the trash. And I don't remember if we salvaged any of them or not, but it just kind of
Were you able to do so? So many dumps don't even permit that now.
I mean, it was a dumpster.
No scavenging.
Right, yeah.
Nowadays.
And my wife has actually taken part in dumpster dive events, and they were told from the beginning, they're like, technically what you're doing is illegal. It's private property that but nobody's going to really do anything about it. I'm not promoting it, but it is But when I was looking at
Maybe they're
those,
afraid of liability, or
right?
something
Because
like
if you
that.
get hurt
Yeah,
on their
of
stuff,
course.
and it's trash, so you don't want to get a cut on metal that's covered in trash. It's a
Exactly.
tetanus shot that you need right there. But when I was looking at those records, I'm like, those will never be listened to again. It just kind of hit me. I'm like, and I realized they're mass-produced records, so there's probably copies of them elsewhere. But what I love coming across when I'm at the Goodwill outlets where I get most of my stuff, I love records. I just picked some up the other day. Pretty well-known titles like Fleetwood Mac's first album.
Sure.
But somebody personalized them, right? They wrote their name on it because they didn't want it to be confused with their best friend's, copy. Or I saw on that one in particular, there was check marks next to the songs. And I assume it was like, oh, these are the songs I recognize. I mean, there's a story behind that.
Sure.
And so it upset me when I saw them in the dumpster because I'm like, even though they're just, I didn't even recognize any of the titles. Most of them were Christmas albums, which is like 90% of what's in thrift stores anyway, or in dumps. I was like, these will just never be played again, and that bothered me. I was like, and that's why
it was
all
once
this stuff
something
is here.
somebody treasured.
Right.
They either received it as a gift or brought it home from a store or whatever. That had incredible amounts of focus from somebody at some time, and now it's just an orphan thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're talking the same language. I think it's perfect.
I'm sure your listeners know this very well, but you're a collector. What do you collect, and why do you collect? And that, if I'm asking a question that you've explained 1,000 times on the show, maybe you can summarize it, because I'm curious.
I love things that have interesting graphics. I don't know. I love paper. I think I mentioned most of this stuff comes from Goodwill outlets, so the bins as they call them. And my first stop there is always the books and the papers. I love that stuff because, I don't know, I just have an appreciation for print culture. I just think it's so neat how, and it's probably the earliest form of American expression.
Sure.
Is the printed word. And
broadsides that were published by our early patriots.
Yeah.
And Thomas Paine.
And I love it because what we were just saying, it's a story.
Yeah.
Right? Even if it's something totally silly, like, free movie at the park tonight, 1996, whatever. I'm like, that happened, that was probably locked away in somebody's memory somewhere.
And what is to become of our print expressions now that we're increasingly in an electronic world?
Yeah. What is going to be our primary sources? What is going to be, I've had students in my class bring that up before. Like, we don't have nearly the amount of physical items, written items in particular, paper items that are going to be left over from us.
And the assumption is you don't need them anymore, unquote. And yet, we're now in a position where there's a great deal of discussion in this world about what you can trust online.
Right.
Whereas when you had dictionaries, encyclopedias, and so on, they may have been limited, but they supposedly had an editorial staff that could be cited, that was overlooking it. Yeah,
and especially for books and magazines and any of those things that have, when I'm doing my collecting, my first thing I like to do is I'll open up any book or any kind of print material and look for the copyright date, look for the...
Sure.
And that, even if it's like third publishing or printing it still makes me happy. I'm like, okay, why did they make this again and again when they did, or whatever.
Sure.
But you're right, digital media is so much harder to navigate.
I mean, it's great for many things, many reasons.
I'm using it right now.
Exactly, you are.
We're making it, right?
There we are.
But it's like... But you just need to be so much more of, if you were to compare it to, say, being a mariner, right, being somebody on the navigating through print material is the calmest waters. It's like a pond, that you're just going from one side to the other. Whereas now with all this internet websites and apps and podcasts and just, it's like a stormy ocean. They're just bobbing around from one place to another.
There's so much choice.
Yeah.
Whereas our ancestors had a dearth of opportunities for diversion and entertainment, we have a plethora. It's, our ancestors, the arrival of the newspaper was a big deal. Morning, evening newspaper, and it was savored and read, and of course it was tossed away the next day or two. It was a birdcage filler, as they used to say. But that was a world even before radio news and television news, and long before internet and the news on the internet. It was a limited amount of things that could be digested and considered and thought about. So we have the exact opposite problem, and we have too much perhaps coming at us. But what is too much? I mean, we can sort through it easier because of the nature of digital media. But wow, the options are just mind-blowing.
I heard a colleague of mine say not long ago, and she's young, so she's part of that millennial generation or Generation Z, or no, she's more Z, Zoomer, whatever. Yeah. But she said, we are just, as young people, bombarded with information. Yeah. That the amount that we consume in just 1 hour is equivalent to what a person maybe even as recent as 50 years ago would get in a day.
Oh, sure.
And go back in time another 50
I was in
years.
advertising. We used to say, and this is 30 years ago, we used to say the average person is bombarded with 5,000 messages a day. But that was 30 years ago.
Right. So now, multiply that by probably about 200.
But how much of it is visual and oral noise, and how much gets through, and how much do we take a moment with? I mean, we're still human beings. We still have the basic human machinery that our ancestors had,
It's just bring this back full circle. We have sped up in many ways, but we actually have slowed down in others. Our infrastructure doesn't keep up with the speed.
Mm-hmm.
Our cars can easily go well over 100 miles an hour and not rattle apart and break. But I can't see somebody doing that safely anywhere on the roads.
Right.
As I was driving down here from New Hampshire, I was in like 10 traffic jams. The roads are not anywhere near what they could be to fit the speed that we should be going, and we've plateaued. And so if there's ever a right time for, plugging two podcasts at once, right, what you and I both do, of asking people to just stop and, obviously not while driving a car, but look and read and digest and think about. And, when I'm gathering my collection, I have that same mindset of when I saw those records, especially when it's personalized things, especially when it's something I'm like, I don't want this to just vanish into a black hole. I don't want it to go away. I want at least the outside chance that somebody else will see it and read it or look at it or listen to it. And
I'm wondering where that comes from in you.
I don't know. I mean, I think
it's almost like a calling for you.
Yeah, and I've only been able to recently put that as a calling.
Yeah.
I know throughout my life, I just never really threw anything out. I can still go back to, and I know my mom in particular has that way about her too. Like my dad would actually,
maybe it's inherited.
Right, that she would have stacks of newspapers.
Yeah.
I delivered newspapers when I was a kid. Okay. And so I think I had that connection with. I used to think about that sometimes too. I'm like, I'm the bringer of news. Yes. I mean, it's boring news from Plattsburgh, New York, so it's nothing like local teen, is a Eagle Scout now. Not exactly breaking news type stuff, but I had my hand in that. My dad's cousin was on the radio for many years in Vermont, in Burlington, and he retired from that some time ago, and he's a mailman now. And I'm like, that's a perfect leap. You're delivering information to people. Right. And I think as a mailman, and I've known, I used to work at the post office in summertime, so I knew a few postal delivery guys, and others more casually. One guy in particular told me one time, he's like, I love my job because I get to go and, I deliver, when I have a stack of mail to deliver, if I see something that looks like it's a birthday card or a nice, I'll put that on top.
Oh, that's
the first thing
very
they see,
thoughtful
instead
mail
of
carrier.
bills or,
Yeah.
and I'm like, that's, maybe I'm connected to that somehow of like, and I am a history teacher. I'm a social studies teacher. So
there we go. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if I mentioned that at the beginning. So that's like kind of
your listeners probably know that.
That's the web.
I'm new to this show.
Yeah. But what is it for you? What is it that brought you to do your show, your podcast about?
Well, Lou had an idea that he wanted to do a podcast because we were interested in these things, and I said sure. And that was, 2.5 years ago now.
But I got to think that your advertising background.
Yeah, and he was in advertising too. So.
And I just recently did an interview with a gentleman who wrote a book called Jeep Show, which is all about the Jeep shows of World War II. That was kind of like the next step up from USO shows, where they would actually bring through Jeeps.
I mean, the Jeeps were the transporting device for the show, or it was the show?
Both. They would actually plug in microphones to the battery so that they could perform.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So it's troops well behind the lines. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
There were no mains.
It wasn't the rest relaxation. The crew. It was. And Mickey Rooney actually was one of those guys.
Yeah.
He was a Jeep show guy in World War II, Battle of the Bulge type stuff, and he came. That author, it's a novel that he wrote, but it's a historic novel. He's from advertising as well. And he said that's how he got the idea and learned about this whole thing, was through the archives at the agency that he worked for.
Sure.
And it's like, so whether it's print ad, radio ad, I mean, when it comes to audio, I've been listening to radio my whole life. I can tell you where I was and what I was doing with certain.
Of course.
It's just like,
of course.
If I would, I love archive.org, the Internet Archives, because they have radio programs on there. So I'll just listen to one. I'm like, I remember where I was when I heard this.
Yeah.
It unlocks memories.
So when you're teaching, what grades do you teach?
High school.
High school. So you're teaching Gen Z now, right?
Yeah.
Is it still Gen Z?
Yeah, I think. That generational labeling of generations is such a modern thing. It's so weird. But yeah, I guess technically there's
just to give your listeners a handle on it. But and you're another label. You're a millennial, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess
late Gen X, early millennial, somewhere around 81.
Okay.
I was born in 81.
So, how do you see this generation, for instance, this year that you're teaching? From previous, is it kids are kids and always the same, or do you see anything different in them that might change history, and what will their imprint be? Are they the same as the millennials before them, or do they relate to ephemera, electronic news, digital? I mean, they're digital natives, but I've heard that some are more selective about their digital consumption than their older brothers and sisters.
I think like any other generation, the individual children are direct reflections of what their parents expose them to and what their parents are like.
Yeah.
And if their parents are always on a screen of one kind or another, they're probably on a screen of one kind or another all the time. And you got to get them away from that. Yeah, I can always spot the students who come from families, similar to the way I was brought up, that, when we had a spare weekend, we would go on a day trip somewhere interesting and just take it in and enjoy it. And those students are the ones who will be more likely to kind of perk up if I give them something from my collection to look at.
Do you see yourself as having any kind of a mission as a teacher?
Oh, absolutely.
And what is that? How do you see that?
To broaden my classroom. In fact, I feel that what I do here is something that I would like to extend as far and wide as I can. That's what inspired the website component to it, and I would love the opportunity to leave my classroom setting but not leave education.
Yeah.
But just bring this style of learning about the past through the artifacts of everyday life, as best I can, and just to encourage more people. I mean, if you made a game out of it, if you made a challenge out of it, it would be so much fun to bring young people to like a Goodwill outlet or a flea market or something like that, and say, or an ephemera fair.
Just to show them there's something besides big box stores.
Here's $50, come back with what you find interesting, and we'll talk about it.
That's an interesting, maybe you could do that with 1 or 2 kids a year as a prize or something like that.
It's, that's what my goal is to make this what I do.
Do you still have do they still have show and tell in schools?
No, I mean I can't say for every school.
It would be younger than your classes.
I mean, my son's 10 years old, and so he's in 4th grade, and
he has no shortage of options for show and tell, from Dad.
Right, probably like too much. Like, why is this? Oh, here's a map from 1973. Like, why does your dad have that? Like, I don't know.
Why not?
Right. Well, and my wife and my son tease me all the time about it. About everything that I do, but they also are very supportive of it.
Yeah.
And he loves going to these places as well. And I think that is something that.
Did you bring him along with you as a youngster?
Oh yeah.
And so it's just part of his growing up.
My wife and I were just at a Goodwill the other day, Goodwill by the Pound, our home base in Gorham, Maine.
Yeah.
That's the one we go to most often, and we were commenting. We're like, wow, we've been coming here since our son was a baby, like when he was still in the cart. And, he could sit in the carriage while we were doing our shopping and stuff like that. And so he's been not only exposed to it, but indirectly, because we've never sat him down and be like, this is the importance of this stuff.
Yeah.
But he's helped me set up my exhibits before, and he'll even find stuff for me like, hey Dad, maybe this could be on your podcast. And
good.
He's been on my podcast a few times, breaking down the things that are important to him. And I think that if more people had exposure to that way of thinking, of don't overlook what's right in front of you. Like I love just taking walks and looking at the built world and be like, that building, that sign, that They get frustrated with me because whenever we go anywhere new and I see like a neon sign or something, I'm like, oh, I've got to take a picture of that. But I'm like, that's what we were saying before. That's somebody's effort, somebody's impression on the world. Let's take a minute and appreciate it.
Sure.
It's like art appreciation.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have to. I just discovered your show today. So
we'll definitely be. I think since we're so similar, One more time for my listeners, how can they best find your show?
Well, this name of the show is Storage Unit 217, and you'll find it on Mixcloud.com. It's on the Kutztown University channel, but if you just go to Mixcloud.com and search Storage Unit 217, all the shows will aggregate for you. And you'll also find us on Facebook, where we post links to each one of our episodes. So Facebook, Storage Unit 217, the show, and you'll find us there too.
And I can't wait to listen on my way home because I love podcasts while I'm driving. So.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Aaron, meeting you, and good luck with your education and program.
I really appreciate it. Take care. Popular culture, by definition, connects and unites us, and proves that people of different backgrounds, in fact, have a lot in common with one another. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, at least in part, for that reason. If it connects with you and you'd like to add to it, or any of the podcast episodes, just visit everything-history.com and search for the Everything as a Primary Source project, which can be found in the classroom section of the website. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Be sure to rate and share this podcast wherever you are listening to it now, and follow Everything as a Primary Source on social media, including YouTube and especially Instagram. Thank you for listening to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source.